Welcome to the PHLY Sixers podcast here with Derik Bodner. I'm Devon Givens of the PHLY Sixers podcast, minus Kyle Neubeck on this one. We'll get through it as we discuss 6'10 front court player and a prospect who could potentially be there for the Philadelphia 76ers, right around that 5'6 range once we find out what the draft order is on lottery night. That could Queen fit? What is the fit with Derik Queen and the Philadelphia 76ers? And as we mentioned, Kyle Neubeck, a story that Kyle has written at allphly.com, his scouting report and the question, how does Maryland big fit in the modern NBA? How does he fit with the Philadelphia 76ers though, Derik?
Yeah, it's an interesting prospect because on the one hand, I think there's a lot of offensive upside. I think he is one of the few players in this range who could end up looking like, a focal point of an offense. I think you can run a lot of your offense through him. I think you can slot him into a similar role, obviously not at the level, but a similar role to what Joel Embiid played offensively. I think he can form a pretty good, pick and roll pairing with Tyrese Maxey, where Maxey can use those pocket passes that he had developed chemistry with Embiid. I think Queen has a lot of skill as a face-up threat, as a short roll guy. He can make pretty good decisions out of it. I think he's got good touch at the rim. I think he's got a lot going for him, and I think he's pretty mobile. The question is going to come down to, can you find a spot to put him defensively, and can he rise and be a good enough defender to make that all worthwhile? He's a little bit short and not a great rim protector to be a traditional center. He can move his feet decently well on the perimeter as a four. You need him to do two things, though, in order to make that work. You need him to grow as a shooter, as he really didn't shoot all that much from the perimeter during his one season in college. Pretty good free throw shooter, but he has to grow as an in-game shooter to make that work offensively. And defensively, he just needs to be a lot more engaged. He needs to be a lot more locked in, paying more attention. He needs to be more focused and just frankly a better decision maker and a more locked in, engaged defender. Because he, especially when he was off ball, he was lost a lot.
Right. And
especially as a big man in the modern NBA, it's one thing he's not, he's comes in a little under 6'9" in shoes, so he doesn't have great positional size to begin with. You compound that with, your rotations are a second late. You don't get great elevation as a vertical leaper. He's going to have, I think, a tough time defensively making that work. I do think theoretically next to Joel Embiid, Embiid, if he's on the floor, can help hide his defense, but you just need him to be more engaged, more locked in, and more consistently focused. Because right now his read and react decision-making on that end is just not good enough.
Well, with that focus, we always talk about it, whether it's defensive rebounding, that's just effort with the effort. So the effort just goes and extends to the focus of making sure that you get that done. And I was as you were talking, I was thinking about what the Sixers' current personnel looks like before any changes are made. And if we're talking about some of their best defenders, from Kelly Oubre to Paul George and Joel Embiid, hypothetically speaking, they're all healthy and at the level of which we think that they can defend. You could hide him a little bit based on those others being around because of who George and Oubre and Embiid can defend. The problem is that in the NBA, they're going to hunt you down. They're going to find you, and they're going to try to exploit that matchup.
Well, and it really is because on the one hand, rookies, especially not top 2 or 3 draft picks, are generally negative players. So you're not really sure you would like him to be a contributor this year, but that's not your major focus. He's an 18 going on 19-year-old kid. You're really projecting for the next decade.
Sure.
So right now, I think Embiid could help mask some of the limitations, but you don't know how much Embiid's going to contribute this year. Obviously, you don't know how long Embiid's going to be a viable weapon like that. And that's really where, to me, the primary concern is, all right, but what is he long-term? And I'm still not 100% sure.
Yeah.
I think offensively, he's a big man. I think you want to put him in space at that foul line area. Let him create off the dribble. That helps. That's easy to do with a lot of spacing around him. I just don't know if I buy him being able to anchor a defense. So I think the fit is going to be something you struggle with for the rest of his career. But if he figures it out, if he is able to get to the point where he's making the right reads, he's making them quickly, he's able to overcome maybe some of his mediocre defensive tools, and you add that into his offensive potential, I think he could end up being I think he is one of the highest ceiling offensive players in this draft. That's what makes it so tough.
What also makes it so tough is as we talk about all these prospects, folks, so if you're joining us here on this one to check out this video, there are going to be many more where we discuss some of these prospects. And Derik, the problem is, as you just talked about, with the hole that's in his game, which is defensively and having to catch up with some things, all the players that we discussed,
all
basically
of
from
them.
5
Yep.
on down, someone does one thing really well, and they're missing this part of their game, which will ultimately put them on the back end of, okay, push you out
Yep.
while we still have a month and a half to review all of these players, and then they jump back in. By the time we discuss this, hopefully the 76ers are in the mix for Queen or some of these other players where we can discuss them for the next month and a half and where they may fall. But you never know how things change when these player interviews come up with the teams. Combine, which is next week, starts off as well, where you start to really get an idea of what the measurements are, where these players might fit specifically with these teams, how much these teams like or dislike player X and Queen in this particular case, and how it all plays out. So we have about a month and a half, and hopefully over the next week, we find out some good news on May 12th that the 76ers are, in fact, staying in the top 6. And if they are at worst 5 or 6, we'll certainly be talking about Queen and many others on the back end of the NBA draft lottery. That's Derik Bodner. I'm Devon Givens. We appreciate Bree, as always, producing. Make sure, again, you go check out allphly.com to check out our teammates Kyle Neubeck's story at allphly.com discussing Derik Queen.
Only a year and a half, buddy.
I know.
Nailed the name.
And how the Maryland Bigs fit in the NBA is, and in our particular case here in Philadelphia, how does he fit with the Philadelphia 76ers?